Hi students, this is week 5 for Digital Graphics 1. I am creating a tutorial on Adobe Illustrator. So I've got Illustrator open, but if you go to File New, you could select letter or any of these custom sizes for your page. It's almost similar to Adobe Photoshop. It'll list the width and height. You can create a blank document, and here I have my blank document. Over to the left column is my selection, tools. So the top one is my selection tool. So if I go to, I'm going to create a rectangle using it in the shapes toolbar. I'm creating a rectangle, and now I have my selection tool, and I can move my object around. I'm going to color it similar to Photoshop. There's a fill dialog down at the bottom. I'm going to color it. The difference between Photoshop and Illustrator is these are vector shapes. So if I hit Shift and I go to the corner here, I can shrink this down or enlarge it, and the resolution is going to be the same. There's no pixels here. It's all vector based. Also, if I just move the sides in, I could change the shape of this object, which you couldn't do in Photoshop. So now I have that. Over to the top right is my layers. So that's on layer 1. If you go to the bottom, you could add another layer, and then I could create another shape. As long as I have that layer selected, I could create another shape. I'm going to use an ellipse tool. You could just drag, but then the ellipse is not perfectly circular. If you hit Shift, it will create a perfect circle. And if you hit Option Shift, it'll create the circle from the center point. So now I have a circle, and I'm going to go ahead and change the color of that. And if you notice, with my selection tool selected, I have it on a second layer. And I can drag those layers up and down. Let's see. I can drag those layers up and down to move the layer from one to the other, similar to that in Photoshop. So now I have two objects. If I use my direct selection tool, you'll see these little anchor points. I could, um, as long as I click on one of those anchor points, I can modify the shape of my box by moving just those single anchor points around. When you select an anchor point on a circle, you have these anchor uh, uh, adjustments, and you could change the anchor. These are anchor bars. You could change the way these curves are by moving these anchor bars around. And we'll go into detail more about drawing these out later. But basically, with the direct selection tool, which is the arrow with no fill in it, I can move things around. So let's go in deeper. Once I get to the direct selection tool, it's one complete shape. I can't move it. You could adjust, you can rotate. If I go to the corner here, you can see how the arrow changes. I can rotate that object. I could click on the edge and enlarge that object. So those are some ways to select objects. Um, Let's move down. So you can make with the tool here, you can make different shapes. You can make lines. Okay. So there is also an eraser tool. If I hit the eraser tool, I can erase into the objects and it will split and break up that object into different shapes. So if I click on the shape, I could essentially move them apart. That's using the eraser tool. There is a brush tool that you could draw with the brush, but it actually creates a line. So if I use the direct selection tool on that brush, you could see all the anchor points that are created here. And you can move those anchor points around with the direct selection tool. You could adjust the anchor bars. It's kind of difficult sometimes to grab them. So you can adjust the anchor bars and adjust the curves. So that's using the brush tool. So I'm going to hit delete. Let's see. If you pick a color, if you have a color, and say you want to select the same color of the object, you could use the eyedropper tool. So you just click on the color you want to change. So that's the red. Take the eyedropper tool and click the other color. So I just selected the red, took the eyedropper tool and selected the green, and it changed the color. So that's that. There are some exercises that I want you to do in Illustrator. This is one of them, but let me grab the other one. So you would download the exercise file in Sundial or on the website. The first one is this exercise. This object over here, if you go to Window Appearance, you will see all the different parts of this object. You could change the stroke of the object here. You could increase the size of the stroke here. You could change the fill of the object. That's not a good example. So you can change the fill. You could even add effects. And right now there's a drop shadow. So I want to increase maybe the drop shadow. I'm moving it over. I'm going to change the color of the drop shadow. So that's using the appearance dialog box. It's really handy. You could also decide on the opacity of the fill. So I'm going to reduce the opacity. Oops. So I just reduced the opacity of the fill so you can see if I actually go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, you can see through. So the appearance dialog box is really handy. If you want to join these lines together to create one line, you would simply hold on a second. You would simply select that anchor point and select that anchor point. So you would select that anchor point and hold Shift and press Command J, and it will join those 2 points together. So what I did was I selected the 2 anchor points with holding the Shift key, and then press Command J, and then it joins. This exercise here is going over the Pathfinder tool. So the Pathfinder tool, if you go to Window, Pathfinder, here it is. If I clicked this object and shift click the other object so they're both selected, and I hit the minus front, you could see that it shows through. It cut a hole. Other things the Pathfinder tool can do, if you move the object over and you select both objects and you hit the Unite tool, it unites those objects. If you click on this and you click intersect, it will only show the object where it intersects. If you click on both and you divide, it divides all the shapes up. So then you could hit the direct selection tool and change the color of that shape there. So it looks like it's blending. So that's the Pathfinder tool. So I'd like for you to work on those exercises. The next exercise is a group and reflect exercise. So using the Pathfinder tool, you select all of this and unite the shape so you have a hand. A good way to copy a shape is holding Option and Shift as you drag, and then to flip it, you would go to your rotate tool and then hit the reflect tool, and then hit Shift and drag with your mouse like in a circle, and it reflects. You could also press 0 for the reflect tool, Shift and drag, and then it reflects. So not 0, O, I'm sorry. O, Shift and reflect. If you press R, you just rotate the object and it won't reflect. So that's that exercise. Another exercise I want you to play with is the layers. So right now, these shapes are all on one layer, if you notice here. If I create a new layer above it, I'm going to take the red star. Oh, first they're all grouped, so you go to Object, Ungroup, ungroup the object. You could also group objects. So if I select all and hit Object, oops, if I hit Object Group, they're all grouped together in one. If you go to Object Ungroup, and that's really handy to be able to group objects. So I'm going to put that, and then I'm going to slide that blue dot up to the next layer. So now that isn't on top. I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to slide the blue dot up to the next layer, so that's below that layer. And then I'm going to take the pink one, create another layer, move the blue dot, so now that's on that layer. So, and then do it one more time, create another layer, and so it's good also to name your layers. So that is a, a square. Um, this is a polygon. And then this is, I'll just call it a line. And then this is a star. So all the layers are in separate layers, and you can drag them around now. You can move them. So that's that exercise. And the final exercise I want you to work on is this exercise. So using the Pathfinder tool, you're going to select these two shapes and unite. And now it's one shape that you can color. These two shapes here, you can shift select both of them, change the color, and hit unite with the Pathfinder tool. This here is a little more difficult, so I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to change their color to that. So the first thing I want to do is this shape needs to go on top of that shape. So I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. Oops. This shape and this shape need, actually this shape here also needs to be brought to front. So Arrange, Bring to Front. So these two shapes need to be combined. So right now they're united. This shape needs to cut out of that shape. So I'm going to select those two and then hit minus front. So now, and then this shape and this shape needs to be cut. So I'm hitting minus front. So now I've got that. And lastly, we want to intertwine these rings. So the way to do that is select all the rings here, divide them, and now that you hit the direct selection tool, you could use your eyedropper and select the color of the ring, and now it's intertwined. So we're going to use the direct selection tool. Let's and then the eyedropper to select the color. And so now they're intertwined. Let's do that one. So now all these rings are intertwined. And lastly, what I want to show you is the pen tool. And so you can just play with it. I'm going to go to File, oops, File, New, great. So with the pen tool, I'm going to pick a color. Excuse me. I'm going to pick a color, and if I click just 1, 2, 3, I've created a shape with a straight line. And using the direct selection tool, I can modify that shape. But if I want to create more of a curve, I would click and then click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and then connect. So that's one complete shape that I connected. So you could do lines and curves. So you click, click, click and drag, click, click and drag, click, click. So this is a very powerful tool. I use it a lot when I illustrate. So I'm just gonna show you. So you could easily start to create artwork um, with this tool. A lot of times, graphic designers create logos um, with with Adobe Illustrator because the resolution is um, high as a vector graphic. So when I design logos, I use Adobe Illustrator to create those logos because I need to use them in many formats. So um, so you could see, I mean, it's kind of tedious to work with, and it takes a while to get used to the pen tool, but it's really powerful. There's a lot you can do with it. So this is my tutorial. I just want you guys to play around. The exercises aren't going to be graded. I just want you to play around in Adobe Illustrator and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, take care. Bye.